Kia ora everybody, it's 1 o'clock. Time to begin the meeting of the Strategy, Planning and Engagement Committee. Welcome everybody. Thank you for making the time to come along. I will start with a karakia timatanga. Kia tōra, namanakitanga, ātaurongarawa, ki tēnā, o tātou I tōnei. Kia tūturu ōwhiti whakamawa, kia tīna, hui e taiki e. Now I will just pass over to Councillor Gary, who wishes to talk about the gift of the name for Te Aka o Tākou, the shared path around Otago Harbour.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for indulging me. I just wanted to acknowledge, in the presence of Megan Potiki, the very generous gift from Tahu Potiki and Te Ranga Runanga o Tākou in this past week, and that is the gift of the name of Te Aka o Tākou, the Otago vine, which is the name that's been gifted for the shared path from Port Chalmers right round to the bottom of the hill at Tairoa Head, and Te Awa Otago River, which is the peninsular side of the shared path, and Te Ara Moana, the ocean path, the State Highway 88 side. It is a very generous and beautiful gift and speaks to the graciousness of mana whenua. So thank you.
Mr Mayor, you wish to speak? Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to reinforce our gratitude and also comment that I think the synergy of the names, especially with Te Ara, the road to the sea, Te Ara Moana with the community at the end, is entirely fitting. And also the metaphor of the river down the other side is also something that will trigger some thinking about the meaning of the words. And I think it's very useful and emblematic of the shared paths. So I think that's great. Thank you very much.
I was just going to say that our old people used to call the harbour a river, so that's why. So they always called it a river, and so when Captain Cook came in the second time, so he sailed past the entrance the first time by accident and went down to Dusky Sound, came back a second time and eventually came into the harbour, and the sort of comments and things that have come through history is that the ocean was, the forest was dripping into the ocean, and the bird song was so unusual, it was deafening, but it was unusual and different to Fiordland. So it had a synergy that was quite unique, and it looked like a river. The harbour looked like a river, so that's why he went with river. And actually Sandy reminded me about it because I'd forgotten that Tahu had actually coined all those, and so any chance that I get to fly his flag, I will. So it's been a good opportunity, so thanks for that. Yeah, ngā mihi.
Thank you. We'll move on to apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Lee Vandervis and an apology for lateness from Councillor Houlihan. So I will move that the committee accepts the apology from Councillor Lee Vandervis and for lateness Councillor Houlihan, seconded by Councillor Walker. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? That is carried. So we'll move on to the confirmation of the agenda. Nothing for anybody to say. I'll move that the committee confirms the agenda without additional alteration. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Benson-Pope. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? That is carried. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded of the need to stand aside from decision making when a conflict arose between their role as an elected representative and any private or other external interests they might have. Are there any changes or updates? Councillor Eklund?
Yes, just I've had something recently added to my list of interests, and it's not on this particular agenda. It is Insulmax Insulation Otago, and I am doing some short-term part-time work for them.
Okay, we will therefore move that the committee amends the elected members' interest register. That's correct, isn't it? And amends the proposed management plan for elected members' interests. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Those in favour say aye. Anyone against? I declare that the motion is carried. Right, confirmation of minutes, item 6. Is anybody anything to bring up about the minutes? Therefore, I will move that the committee confirms the public part of the minutes of the Strategy, Planning and Engagement Committee held on the 8th of May 2023 as a correct record. May I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That is carried. Part A, reports. We will move to item number 7, Strategy, Planning and Engagement Committee Forward Work Programme. Ms Jeanette Wikara will speak to the report. Do you have anything to add?
No, happy to take any questions. Kia ora.
Does anybody have any questions?
Kia ora, councillors. I just want a quick update on the Forward Work Programme. Apologies, there's an error in a date for the Reserve Management Plan section of the Botanic Garden. It says there that the will commence on the completion of the Botanic Garden Strategic Plan in June 23. We're re-engaging with our stakeholders, and that will include councillors. So the new date will be October. So we'll update the Forward Work Programme accordingly.
No questions. Therefore, I will move that the committee notes the Strategy, Planning and Engagement Committee Forward Work Programme. Is there a seconder? Councillor Walker, thank you. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? That is carried. So we'll move on to item 8, which is the 10-year plan 2024-2034 development, and Ms Jeanette Wikara and Jasmine Lamori will speak to the report.
We're happy to take questions.
Does anyone have any questions? I've got one that I'll throw in there. Just on page 27 on paragraph 19, it talks about the early engagement. It says from June to September, the development of the plan focuses on confirming assumptions, drafting budgets and refining levels of service. During this time, staff will also undertake early engagement. And I just wondered if we could just have a little explanation on how the early engagement works.
So in the work streams, you'll see that there's an engagement stream. After this report is noted by council, by the committee, all those work streams will go into action. But at this point, the conversations around early engagement are around working with some of the other work streams to identify some possible topics, even just to let them know the 10-year plan is happening and what do you think, that we can start to go out and just have some low-key early engagement with the broader community around the 10-year plan is coming. This is what we're planning to do. You know, what are your thoughts? What sorts of things are on the top of your mind? So that at this point, that's what our sort of early engagement conversations have looked like. We will come to council with a bit more of an engagement plan around that as soon as the work stream kicks in.
No other questions? Would anybody like to move the motion? Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move this. I think it's good to have such a clear explanation of how this process is going to proceed. We all know how important the review of the 10-year plan is each time, no more so than now. And I can't recall a time when we've been better informed or had more background work already in place about where we're going, where we are and where we're going. So I'd like to congratulate staff on setting the groundwork so well for this process and wish everyone wise decision making for the future.
We have no other speakers, so I guess you'll forgo your right of reply. I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That is carried. Now we will move on to item number 9, the Heritage Action Plan, and welcome Mr Simon Drew and Mr Mark Maudsley to speak to the report.
Happy to take it as read, answer any questions.
anyone got any questions? Councillor Wiley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question about the potential panel, and it talked about a raft of people across the industries and involvement in this area. And then I looked at the makeup of the panel in 2011. Do you think it's going to be quite similar, or is there going to be a lot more industry? And it seemed like the 2011 panel was very much a lot of council involvement with some outside council involvement. Is there going to be a greater balance of 50-50, for example, between council and non-council?
Yes, we've loosely based the membership on that earlier membership group, but also tried to get a greater balance of people from across the industry, so in consultancies, in development, in construction, as well as in council.
No more questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Right, I am going to move the motion that the committee approves the proposed Heritage Action Plan Advisory Group terms of reference and notes the proposed program and workshop focus area. Councillor Benson-Pope will second. Thank you. In moving this and speaking to this, I am kind of ecstatic to see it come to the table after adding it to the work program back in January. Obviously, heritage is Dunedin's superpower, and we need to make sure that we are looking after it. We have our 2007 heritage strategy, and to me it was absolutely imperative that we get moving on this. We've had issues around buildings with demolition by neglect, and we haven't really got our act together to try and proactively make sure that we're looking after this. And my goal, I guess, is I keep going on about the heritage capital of New Zealand, but that is exactly what I think we are, and we need to strengthen that both to make sure that we're looking after the assets that we have for our community for the future, and also to attract visitors to the city who support actually a lot of those heritage buildings, whether it's staying at an air bed and breakfast in a heritage place or visiting a iconic heritage attraction, some of our wildlife heritage, etc., etc. So what we want to do with this plan is to bring everything together, and I think the advisory group will be good there. My one concern just about the report there was just the wideness of the strategy. When I looked at the strategy from 2007, the challenges are still the same. How can we value and protect Dunedin's heritage from being lost? That's a huge concern. We hate seeing the gaping holes in the landscape. How do we ensure comprehensive and visible protection of heritage in Dunedin? And how can we raise the level of appreciation for heritage values? And also, how do we share the responsibility to retain and maintain heritage? And that's where I think that everyone's waving at me. Share the responsibility with a lot of people who own the buildings as well to make sure that we are looking after them. The actions range from better interpretation, which helps people understand and appreciate recording of the sites, advisory support and guidelines, identifying and promoting other funding. Council was quite a funder of a lot of the heritage reuse, and it would be good to be able to look wider and work together. Annual reviews of Council's heritage provisos, and I think when we're looking at a lot of those bylaws, we are getting a little caught up. When I went back and looked at the old plan, it did have a lot of looking at how we could perhaps look at different rates on people that have knocked buildings down and made them into car parks. So those are some things we could think about. Encouraging training courses. When we look at the beautiful work that's been done down at the railway station, we could have ourselves as a centre for excellence for some of those crafts which are lost and needed. Promoting and creating themed heritage festivals, and shout out for the Heritage Festival, 5th to the 15th of October this year. Heritage plaques, better signage, better website, support the heritage networks, encourage heritage conference and workshops and lectures by international speakers, and then work in partnership with all stakeholders. So these were things that came out of the heritage strategy, and I think are casting a wider net over dealing with the heritage action plan. I think that's all I have to say. I'll save anything for my right of replies. So Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in reinforcing the comments that you made, I don't think there's any doubt around this table or elsewhere in the city about the credibility of this authority in delivering wonderful assets and protecting the ones we have. We're sitting in a building, after all, that is a reuse and refurbishment of previously unused buildings. We know that we own the railway station, which has just had its second makeover, and our activities forced government to face up to their responsibilities in respect of the High Court. And similarly, other buildings are their responsibility and ours. The municipal chambers is having its second refurbishment as we speak, hence our presence here. And all over the city, there are private owners of heritage and other character contributing buildings who've seen the benefit of the funding that this community has for a long time been prepared to put into this this cash stream, but actually been prepared to increase. So there's no doubt about where we are, and that leads me to why I initially had some reservations about this report. I was concerned initially until I saw the paper that it had the potential to be a discussion festival about things we already knew and had already discussed and determined. I don't think that's the case, and there are a number of dimensions and depth to the report that you have alluded to that are areas that do need more pressing attention, and that is one of the reasons I'm supportive of this recommendation now. The other one is that magical inclusion of a sunset clause. I wouldn't have supported this had that not been the case, but giving this group roughly a year's time to actually deliver on some of the substantial demands alluded to in the report, I think is a great way of focusing the mind. And it's not just the matters that you alluded to, there are also other policies that the council needs to move on, such as the issues around vacant, potential accommodation in the CBD and the associated issues that run with that. So I think this is a good way forward with the qualification that the group needs to meet, and we know we're well endowed as a city with expert refurbishers, designers and engineers. It would be great to make sure that, and I'm sure Mr Maudsley will, that we also capture some of the out-of-town skills that have come in recently to show us how we can better convert some of the buildings that still offer so much potential. So that said, I'm sure this will be strongly supported by Council and will deliver in short term rather than long on the expectations that are around the table that are raised by a report like this.
Councillor Weatherall, did I see your hand go up? No. Okay. Thank you, Megan.
Kia ora. So I'm just seeing I see the plan here, but there's advisory groups, but I'm wondering where mana whenua sits in that, and I do see there's a statement, but for me and for my mokopuna, I'm wondering where we are in the landscape here in Dunedin. Still not that obvious, to be honest, and I think I will be spending the rest of my years pushing to see us in the city. So I would expect that goes hand in hand with what you call heritage, because we want to plan going forward. That means that mana whenua is seen that we're not just a little village out on the edge of the peninsula, which is not who we are, and that our tupuna are seen in the city, and so I think that needs to be thought through a bit more carefully. I don't see us really in here. I see a statement, but we're not really in here.
Thank you. I will go to my right of reply, and I do have the the old plan in front of me, and it does talk about the kaitahu philosophy of cultural heritage. Also, I think that in the advisory group we do have a mana whenua representative in there, so we will work in partnership, and that was the intention, was to work in partnership to ensure that we have a holistic heritage action plan that encompasses everything that we need to do. It sounds like a mighty challenge with a small time to do it, but I'm sure that we will crack on and get it done. So, speaking of cracking on, I shall put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Did you want to speak, Marapura? No? Okay. That is carried. Thank you. We will move on to item 10, the Reserve Management Plan Review Schedule. Mr. Simon Pickford and Mr. John Brinkley will speak to this report.
Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor O'Malley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just looking at the appendix list at the end and your list of operative plans. And it's really just a question of what makes a plan operative in terms of, I know one in particular that I have some particular knowledge of, which is the Orkea Reserve Management Plan, which was penned in 2010 and therefore expired in 2020. So how does a plan still remain operative when it's got past the end of the...
Basically, it stays operative until we renew it, and so even though it says that it's expired, it's still actually operative. So most of these are, even except for the new ones. So Signal Hill, even though we're reviewing it now, the previous one is still operative.
Yeah, I guess my question really was, the plans came with a date of renewal on them, and would it be fair to say that a fair number of them are a long way past that date now?
Yes, they are.
I got a very specific one about the Waikawaiti Domain Reserve Management Plan being rolled into a general plan. Considering its role in freedom camping, is that, well, have you considered its role in freedom camping, if you can, and bring it into a general plan?
It was one of the ones that we were considering rolling it into just the general policies, and the reason that we think there's currently a lease in place there for the campground. It's not specifically regarding freedom camping. We have a separate bylaw for that. Yeah.
Wrong town.
Does anyone else have any more questions? Councillor Fiso?
Tēnā koe, Madam Chair, tēnā korua. Just following on from Ms. Portugue's question comment from the previous item, in terms of the Māori impact statement, so mana whenua through Aukaha are going to be invited to advise on the RMPs. So previously, or are they currently involved in advising on all of them?
Yes. So we've basically, as you know, with Treeby King was the first one we started to do, and we've been trying to address how we speak with mana whenua, and working with Aukaha seems to be the best way to do it. So all the new plans that we're rolling on from now on, we've been getting involved, and so yeah.
Councillor Gary?
Thank you. Just on to page 104. And item number 7, the Otago Boat Harbour Recreation Reserve Management Plan 2005 and the Otago Harbour Reserves Management Plan 2006. It says it will contribute to the Harbour Recreation Plan. Will those still remain separate, or will they?
They'll be rolled into one. Yeah.
Any more questions? Would anyone like to move? I shall move it from the chair. I move that the committee notes the Reserve Management Plan review schedule. Would anyone like to speak? Councillor Eklund. Oh, sorry, second. You're seconding, Councillor Eklund? Yeah, thank you. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? The motion is carried. Move to items for consideration by the chair. Has anybody got any items for consideration by the chair? Thank you. Therefore, I will close with the karakia, whakamutuka, unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia mama, te kāko, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takatu, koia rā I roko, whakai iras, a ki ki ruka, kia tina hue taike. And I will close the meeting and I will move a resolution to, sorry, I won't close the meeting, a resolution to exclude the public. I move that the committee, pursuant to the provisions of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, exclude the public from the following part of the proceedings of this meeting for the reasons outlined in the agenda. May I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Gilbert. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? That is carried.